We're going to do a message today called Tear It Up in 2018. How many like to tear it up in 2018? How many like to know what it is before you commit to tearing it up? You know, you may want to just stop and think before you commit to something and make sure you know what it is. We're going to talk about tearing something up in 2018, and I'll explain that as we go through. 2 weeks from today, I'm going to begin a series called The Heart of the Father, and we're going to look at the story Jesus told of the prodigal son. We call that the story, the prodigal son, but I really believe it's more about the heart of the Father, and I believe this story is meant to reveal to us the heart of Father God for us, even when we're wandering away from Him. So we're going to learn some good stuff about the Father we have in God and His heart toward us starting 2 weeks from today. So I hope you're excited about that. I am, and God's going to do some good things there. But today we're going to talk about tearing it up in 2018. We're going to look at a chapter today, 1 Corinthians 13. That is, we're going to look at just one little sentence from the chapter. But it's what a lot of people call the great love chapter. It's written about love. And it's in kind of a what some people consider an odd spot in the Bible, because the Apostle Paul in the book of 1 Corinthians is talking in chapter 12 and in chapter 14, almost like bookends around this chapter. He's talking about spiritual gifts. It's one of the most in-depth treatments of spiritual gifts in all the Bible, and right in the middle of it you have this passage about love that you'll also often see in wedding programs and Valentine's messages. You'll see it, verses from it, because it's all about love. And some people wonder at the placement of that. I think the reason for that is this, that Paul, as he's talking about spiritual gifts, he's telling us that spiritual gifts must be exercised in love. In fact, he says you can have all kinds of powerful gifts and all kinds of amazing talent, but if you don't give it to people with a heart of love, it doesn't mean a thing at all. He says your spiritual gift is nothing more than noise if it doesn't come from a heart of genuine love. And then in chapter 13 of 1 Corinthians, he tells us what godly biblical love really looks like. And I love the practicality of this chapter. He doesn't describe love as a feeling you feel or as an emotion that comes and goes from day to day. He describes love as things you do and things that you do not do. It's very practical. Love is active. It is not passive. And the Apostle Paul gives us a clear roadmap for what love really is. I think in our heart we all want to know what love is. In fact, there's a song from my childhood. I want to know what love is. I want you to show me. That's from my childhood. One of the guys in second service said, I wasn't a child when that song came out. Some of you may not have been born. We want to know what love is. And that song's a beautiful song expressing the heart that so many of us have. We want to know what real love looks like. And it's demonstrated in the life of Jesus Christ, and it's written out for us in 1 Corinthians 13. He tells us what love is. Now, we're kind of messed up in English. I don't think we have enough words for love. The Greek, the original language of the New Testament, had at least 4 different words to describe different types and different levels, if you will, of love. We just have one word that kind of covers everything. We say, I love my spouse. And that's a mouthful. That is a big thing to say. When you're married to someone, you are one with them in God. Your life is committed to them. You belong to them. You're tied to them. But yet we turn around and say, I love the new taco they are having at Taco Bell. I mean, we're using the same, some people got excited about Taco Bell. We use the same word for that most intimate, powerful relationship in our lives, and we apply it to food that we happen to like. I mean, it just tells me that we don't have enough vocabulary to really describe love for what it really is. I'd like for you to jump in with me today and just make a commitment in your heart that you're going to let God define love for you. That you're going to let God tell you what love is. You can't let the culture do that. Now, we don't sit around and beat up on the culture at Upward. We don't just talk about how bad the world is, but you'll see that the culture in all its search for love is really not getting any happier, any more content. The culture in all its search for love is really getting angrier, more divided, more discontented, more upset all the time. So why not stop letting a culture that is going in a lot of bad directions define love for us? Why not just listen to our Creator and let Him tell us what love really is? I want to challenge you beyond today to look at 1 Corinthians 13 and let it guide you into what true and real love is. We're going to look at just one short verse today, one short part of one verse, 1 Corinthians 13:5, and this is what it says. It says it, and that it, you could put a parentheses there, love. Love keeps no record of being wronged. Now, before you argue with that, this is not my opinion. This is what God put in His Word. And I believe the Bible is God's Word for us today. I believe it is inspired. I believe it is authoritative for us as a rule and practice in our lives. And it says, love keeps no record of being wronged. It doesn't say love throws out a few records or love keeps a small amount of records. It says love keeps no record of being wronged. And that's amazing to me to think about, being able to live a life where I keep no record of being wronged. Where I grew up, there was a little country store. Years ago, I was born in the 60s, and years ago, there wasn't a Walmart on every corner or an Ingles at every street like we have here in Hendersonville. You didn't have groceries everywhere. So there were a lot of smaller country stores, and they were gathering places for the neighborhood. How many of you remember a little store like that near where you grew up, where you knew the owners and they knew you, and everybody in there kind of knew? It kind of became a place of community. It was one of those old stores. All the old men sat around in the store and they played checkers. I mean, it's kind of the romanticized version. That's really what happened in this store. You knew everybody. The lady, the couple that ran the store kept pictures of all the kids that were born in the community. Right over the ice cream freezers, they had pictures of all the children. I had my picture up there. I mean, it was a beautiful place. They knew me. You could go in that store. I went in there. You could get anything from a hammer to a Snickers bar. It was just a little building. They seemed to have everything in there. But if they knew you, you could start a tab. My dad went in one day, and I was a kid, and I watched him. He had something, and he reached around, and he's forgotten his wallet. And the lady behind the counter owned it. Her name was Betty. Precious lady. She died just a few years ago, and it was a huge thing in the whole community. But he said, Betty, I didn't bring my wallet. Put it on my tab. She said, oh, that's fine, Tony. And he put it on his tab and left. And I thought, wow. I was in there shortly after that. You know what happened, don't you? I got me a Pepsi and a pack of nabs. That's what I always got. Pepsi and a pack of nabs. And if you don't know what nabs are, you've just missed out on so much in life. You've missed out on life. It's those orange peanut butter crackers, in case you don't know. They're delicious, and if you argue with me, I'll argue back. Got a Pepsi and a pack of nabs. And I went up, I said, Betty, put that on my dad's tab. She did it. She did. So I thought, this works. So I tried it a second time. She did it. The third time, Betty said, Andy, she knew me. She said, does your dad know you're putting all this on his tab? I said, no, I don't guess he does. She said, you can't put anything on his tab without him knowing. So you talk to your dad. She's the sweetest lady on earth, but she was protecting my dad and her store and everything else, and that was a good thing. This word, keeps no record, is an accounting word, which means love doesn't run up a tab of all the wrong that's been done to you. Love keeps no record of wrong. Love doesn't write it down when somebody does you wrong. Now, I hope you don't actually have a journal in which you record all the wrong things that have been done to you. Now, I tell you, I've known people who do things like that. Somebody does them wrong, they write it down. I knew a lady once, and here's how we are. We write down, we do it in our minds. We do it in our stomach because you feel it in your stomach. We write it down in our stomach, I think. That's why we get ulcers. We write down when somebody owes us money and they haven't paid us. How many of you remember somebody that's owed you money for years and haven't paid you? You remember that? Right. You're going to tear that up today. That wasn't a joke. You guys always laugh at the wrong places. And then when I tell something really funny, you just stare at me. We write it down when people do wrong against us. Here's another thing we do. We write it down when we do good for somebody else. We keep close track on that too. Because we have it in our minds that when we do good for them, somewhere down the road, they owe us a favor, and they've got to be there for us like we were there for them. Have you ever done somebody ever done you wrong, somebody that you helped, and you went back in your head and said, and out of all the stuff I've done for them, been there for them, helped them, lent them money, was there when they were sick, took them food, went to see them in the hospital, whatever you did, and you remember now they've done me wrong, look where we are, all the good things I did, and they weren't there for me. That's keeping score. Today we're going to tear up the scorebook, and we're going to walk in biblical love. We remember the wrongs that have been done against us. We remember all the rights that we've done. You invite them to your child's birthday party and they don't show up, and you remember that you went to their child's birthday party. I am so thankful my children don't have birthday parties anymore. Hallelujah. You bought them a wedding gift, and when you got married, they didn't get you one. That's being a scorekeeper. Now, believe me, scorekeeping really comes into play in your marriage. Don't say amen. Don't even nod. Don't even move right now. But scorekeeping can come into play in all your relationships. This is not just about marriage, but it applies to marriage. I'm a scorekeeper. I remember the things that people have done against me, and I remember the good things I've done for them. And if they do me wrong, I start thinking about, man, I've done all this. And if somebody does me wrong or owes me something, I think about it. By nature, that's who I am. Thank God for Jesus. Thank God for Jesus that we're all not walking according to our nature, but according to His. But sometimes marriage discussions you have in marriage, and that's a real clean word. Discussions you have in marriage are often exercises in scorekeeping. I like to cook. Anybody like to cook? Any guys like to cook? I'm a good cook. I can cook you something good to eat, but I'm a messy cook. I don't clean up. I mean, I just use every pot and pan in the house and every dish in the house, and I can destroy a kitchen. There'll be some good food, but the house will be about destroyed. My wife came down one day. She had just cleaned the house, and I cooked something, and she said, "Can't you clean all these dishes?" And I said, "Well, I cooked this whole meal." "Well, I just wish you'd clean the dishes once in a while." And I said, "Well, I just wish you'd get out of bed once in a while at 6 a.m. and let those dogs out when it's 10 degrees. Because I was doing that yesterday and you were asleep." How many of you don't need me to finish the story of how that worked out? It's like Dr. Phil would ask, "How's that working out for you?" It does not work well. That's scorekeeping. Anytime, "Well, I wish you could help a little more." I'm ready with 10 things I've already done. I should have been a lawyer, people tell me, because I'm ready to defend myself with my list of things that I've done right and a few things that you've done wrong. Instead of talking to me, maybe you better correct your own behavior. And I'm still married. There is a God in heaven. That's not the way to live. Your marriage will turn around when you stop keeping score. When you just tear up the scorecard and say, "I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not going to keep score of the wrongs that people have done against me." I was in a restaurant the other day. My wife and I enjoyed being on a cruise last week. We were in 77 degrees last week. And just, if you're jealous, just go ahead. That's okay. I would be jealous of you if you went on one. We went down to Mexico and got off the ship, and we're in a restaurant and ordered lunch, and I got the bill, and it said $680 on my credit card. $680. I said, "Lord, this is not good." Then I found out they had a dollar sign, but it was 680 pesos, which was fine. But then, being the person I am, I want to make sure I didn't get cheated, so I started figuring up the conversion rate, making sure they didn't overcharge me. And you know, their conversion rate wasn't quite what I wanted it to be, so I was going to go up and question the cashier and say, "No, you should have given me, you give me 17 and it should have been 20. I was calculating it all up. And I could feel my stomach tightening up because I don't like to get cheated. Anybody know what I'm talking about? You don't like to get cheated. You don't like to be wrong. My stomach started tightening up, and I thought, oh, I got to fix this. And it's like the voice of the Holy Spirit just stopped me and said, son, let it go. You're on vacation. And even if they did do you wrong, it probably won't amount to more than $5. $5, ain't worth it. Some of you are sitting here saying, but it's still $5. It's got to be just right. That's why you're sick all the time. Take it from a guy who's walked down that road with you. That's why you're stressed out all the time. The score's got to be settled. Everything's got to be right. It's all got to be perfect, and you're keeping track. It's hard to keep track of all these things. Have you ever run into a person who has done you wrong in the store, and I'm talking about the stomach a lot for a reason. Your stomach tightens up when you see them. Anybody here? Sometimes I feel like I'm the only sinner here at Upward, and I told him in second service, sometimes I feel like this is just my big confessional, and I'm getting just you just feel your stomach tighten up when you see him. How many of you believe that tightening in your stomach is affecting your body physically? Let me just hear me. God, I still believe in a God who heals our diseases. The Bible said he forgives our sin and he heals our diseases. He does that. Part of that is when our emotions and our mind come into alignment with God and his word. Our physical bodies will come into alignment with him as well. And I believe some of us are sick because we're scorekeepers. You hear me on that. If you will let your emotions be led by the Holy Spirit, your physical body will be a lot healthier. And I believe there's some people here who you've kept score so long, you've torn your stomach up. And God wants to offer you healing today as you tear that card up. No more scorekeeping. Now, I know what you might think. Well, Pastor, I have to keep score to protect myself from pain. I have to keep score or I will get hurt. Let me help you navigate this fog here a little bit. There's a difference between forgiveness and trust. They're not the same thing. If someone has abused you repeatedly, forgiving them does not mean you entrust them with your life going forward. If someone has cheated you in a business deal, you can forgive that, but that does not mean you have to do business with them again. It is my responsibility to forgive. It is their responsibility to build trust with me. You understand that? Trust isn't something you just give. Trust is something that they build with you over time. I'm not saying tear up the scorecard against a person who's been abusive to you for years and years and just go back to them like nothing ever happened. Don't misunderstand forgiveness to be that. Forgiveness simply means I release it out of my life. I release them from the penalty of this. I'm not going to hold it in my heart against them. I'm not going to wish that God would punish them. I'm letting them go. I may not enter into the relationship again. I'm going to be wise, but I'm letting it go. Say, well, if I live that way, people might take advantage of me. They will, but you'll be happier. They will, but you will be free. See, here's the truth. We think that keeping score keeps us from pain, but keeping score really ties us to pain. Keeping score keeps me connected to the people who have hurt me. But when I release it, I'm free. I had a guy tell me after second service today, I had a guy come up to me and tell me, he said, Pastor, I was on indigestion and reflux medicine for years. And he said, I had a sin that I'd never confessed. He said, when I confessed it and repented of it, I never had to take that medicine again. Any of you know what I'm talking about? When you're holding on to it, it's just here eating away at you. And you just say, no more keeping score. I'm tearing it up. There's a man in the Bible named Joseph. He's in the latter part of the book of Genesis. It's one of the most amazing life stories in all the Scripture. Joseph got knocked down hard at least 3 times. I mean, he got knocked down hard 3 times. He's raised up. His father's got at least 12 sons. Joseph is the favorite son, and his father shows favoritism. You read the life of Jacob, he was a really bad parent. Jacob was a bad parent. All the people in the Bible didn't do the right thing. Many of them did the wrong thing. He was a bad parent. He showed favoritism to Joseph, and Joseph also had a really big mouth and an arrogant attitude. Joseph was the favorite, and he wanted everybody to know it. Joseph told his brothers, I've had a dream. One day you guys are all going to bow down to me. Some people say, well, that dream was from God. He should have kept his mouth shut. He shouldn't have told. You've got to think about how your words affect people. You don't go saying something like that. His brothers continually got mad. One day he's coming down the road and they said, here comes the dreamer. We'll kick his tail. I said, let's throw him in a hole over here. They took the coat off of him. They threw him in a hole. A band of Egyptian travelers were passing by. They sold their brother into slavery. They said, this is our slave. Will you buy him? He goes down the road wailing and pleading with them not to do this. Drug off into a foreign country as a slave. He had an offense. He had a big mouth, but it wasn't that bad. I'm going to tell you, if he could have kept score, he had some scores. He finds himself a slave in the house of a man named Potiphar. And let me tell you what Joseph did. Everywhere he was, he got promoted to the top or second in command. Everywhere he was, he kept coming back. Every time he got knocked down. That tells me his life's worthy of study. He is such a good slave that he gets promoted in the house to the second in command, and everything in the house is under his authority except Potiphar's wife, who wants him. One day Joseph's walking along, she's lying in the bed, and she was really subtle about it. She said, come lie with me. That was a joke. That was sarcastic, that she was subtle. See, again, I tell you, you laugh at the wrong places. You got to get with me here. Some temptations are subtle. She was not. She tried to drag him into bed. And Joseph was tempted. And you know what he did? He didn't stand there and pray. He didn't try to lead her to Jesus. He did what all of us need to do, especially with sexual temptation. He ran. You got to run away from sexual temptation. You run. That's the strategy. Run. He left. How many of you know he did the right thing? He did the right thing. He said, my master's given me everything, and how could I sleep with his wife? He's been so good to me. He ran. Doing the right thing does not always produce the right result. Because the wife who'd been scorned now accused of Joseph of trying to assault her. Potiphar believed his wife, threw Joseph into prison. So now he's in prison for doing the right thing. You think he was tempted to keep score? Probably. But he didn't. You know why? He always kept rising back to the top. How do I know he didn't keep score? Bitter people don't get promoted. Bitter people don't get promoted. How many like to be promoted in 2018? Y'all are so ambitious. This crowd, so ambitious. Big dreams, big dreams. 4 of us have big dreams. How many like to get promoted? How many like to make more money? Now, I know how Christians are. Oh, that's not spiritual. I just want to stay humble. Let me phrase it in terms you can understand. How many of you would like to have enough in 2018 that when you went to the grocery store, you weren't worried about putting things back, but you could bless another family who didn't have enough and just pay for their groceries? How many of you would like to get to a place where you could do that without worrying about it? Would you like to be able to do that? How many like to see a single mom who needed tires on her car and you notice it and just say, I'm going to buy you a set of tires? How many like to be able to do it? That's how God bless you. He doesn't bless you just to store it up. He blesses you so you can bless. You want to be promoted. Let me tell you, you want to be promoted, tear up the scorecard. That's exactly what Joseph did. He kept tearing up bitterness. He wouldn't allow it into his life. See, what we think protects us from pain actually inhibits our promotion. Hanging on to that scorecard doesn't protect us from pain anyway. The more you keep score, the more pain you have, the more sickness you have, the more upset you have in your life. But when you let it go, you are free to be the person Jesus called you to be, and he can promote you into all kind of new things. Joseph's in prison now. He gets promoted in the prison. He's now helping run the prison, and people are coming to him with their problems. A couple comes, he solves their problems. He tells one of them, you're going to be promoted back to Pharaoh's palace. When you get there, remember me. He forgot him. Joseph's languishing in prison. He's doing the right thing. He had so many opportunities to get bitter, so many opportunities to keep score and get upset, but he kept tearing that scorecard up. Finally, the guy remembered him, and all of a sudden, Joseph answers Pharaoh's question, and Joseph is now second in command of all of Egypt. He entered the country a slave. He died second in charge, only next to Pharaoh. Why? He tore up the scorecard. Now, here's where it gets delicious. Have you ever, now, I'm just warning you, I'm getting in the flesh here for just a minute, just to demonstrate. Have you ever fantasized about that person that hurt you coming back to you later in life with a need? Have you ever thought, they'll come back one day? They'll come crawling back. And by George, when they come crawling back, I'm going to settle the score, baby. It's going to be even. One day. How many have ever thought this way? Can we just be honest today? A few of us here. I'm glad you have some honesty. Thought, I'll show them. One day, they say, what comes around goes around. One day they're going to come back and they're going to need some help, and I'll show them then. Joseph got that opportunity. It must have been tempting. His brothers, now Joseph is over all of Egypt. A great famine hit the land, which Joseph prophesied. People are starving in multiple nations, and they're coming to Egypt for food, and they have to come to Joseph. See, now he's a savior and deliverer because he tore up the card. His brothers come in and bow down before him just like in the dream and said, save us. And you know what he could have done? He could have made every one of them a slave. He could have said, go to Potiphar's house. Just look out for the wife. Go to Potiphar's. He could have put them all in slavery, but he didn't. He tore it up. He kept no record of wrongs. He willingly forgot what his brothers did. And this is what he said in Genesis 50. Genesis 50, he said this to his brothers. He revealed himself to them, and they were scared to death. He said, nope, you intended to harm me, but God intended it all for good. He saw that God had a purpose even in the offenses that came against him. He said, he brought me to this position, that's promotion, so that I could save the lives of many people. I'm telling you, friends, God's got a work for you to do. God's got a destiny ahead of you to be a blessing to people around you. He's got a purpose. He made you with a purpose. He's got a plan for your life, and he wants to reveal himself through you everywhere you go. Can I get an amen? That's not just for pastors. It's certainly not just for me. There's all kind of places you go that I can't be. He wants to do it in me. He wants to do it in you. He wants to show himself through you, but he is not free to do that until you are free from keeping score. When you tear that card up and say no more record of wrongs, no more reciting what people have done badly to me, and no more reciting the good deeds I've done. I'm going to live in love for people. See, love ought to come from what's inside of us. It shouldn't react to what's happening around us. Amen? We need to make a decision to love as God loved. I remember the great nurse, Clara Barton. Someone came to Clara Barton. She's a heroic nurse. And someone came to her at one point in her later years and reminded her of an offense someone had committed against her that was very serious. And they said, don't you remember this offense? And Clara Barton's response was amazing. She said, I distinctly remember forgetting that. Some of you, today is your day that you will distinctly remember the day you forgot it. The day you said no more. The day you said, I'm not going to keep track of wrongs anymore. And I believe as you make this decision, as I make this decision, healing is going to come to our bodies. I believe that. I believe promotion is going to come our way, and God's going to open doors for us to move forward like we never dreamed possible, because we made a decision not to keep score. Amen. When somebody does you wrong, forgive them quickly and leave it with Jesus and walk in freedom. When you do something good for somebody, leave that with Jesus. Forget it. Lay it at His feet. Because in the end, He Himself will reward you. Amen. Tearing up the card today. How many say, Pastor, I want to tear that card up. I want to tear up the scorecard. I don't want to keep on keeping score of the bad. I want to walk in freedom. Let me pray for you today. Jesus, thank you for your word to us.